Can't escape the magic. By Artifacts. Chapter 10. Cinna! Nacht cried as he rolled his friend over. The freckled man kneeled down next to him. Was he hit by one of the stuffs? He asked, concerned, looking over his shoulder at Sin. No, I made sure neither of them were hit. The older man knelt next to Cinna. Nacht hovered anxiously by his side, crouching by Cinna's hip. Nacht, Cinna hoarsely whispered. His face was flushed and his green eyes were glazed as they nauseatingly scanned for Nacht. The tan boy scrambled for his friend's hand. Cinna, I'm here. Are you okay? I'm dying. No, you're not! Nacht began crying. Tears began dribbling down his cheeks. I'm going to be a ghost. Cinna sounded dazed and half asleep. No, you can't! Cinna! Nacht abandoned Cinna's hand to grip desperately on his ragged shirt. It's so hot. Hot? Nacht looked suspiciously through his tears. He let go of his shirt and walked back on his heels. You're just overheated again? That's it? His voice was incredulous. Heat exhaustion can be dangerous. Let's get him to a cool bath. The freckled man scooped Cinna into his arms. He dashed off with Nacht at his heels. Cinna followed them and called back to Morgiana and Aladdin. Don't worry about Cinna. We'll take care of him and meet you guys for lunch later on. The quiet red-headed man glanced at Morgiana one last time and followed silently behind. Jafar walked quickly but evenly down the hall as to not jostle the overheated boy unnecessarily. The turbaned boy was babbling quietly as Nacht kept pace with him. I met a ghost once, Nacht absently recalled. What? Cinna, you're not making sense. Nacht jogged closer as he was gripped with confusion by his friend's words. He's delirious from the heat. Keep him talking until we get him cooled down. He's delirious from the heat. Keep him talking until we can get him cooled down, Jafar ordered as Sin and the red-headed man caught up to them. Masroor, get some maid to pour cool, not cold, water into the tub. Quickly. The red-haired man nodded and flew swiftly down the hall ahead of them. Whose ghost did you meet, young one? Jafar's voice changed to be gentle, but his eyes were steely and determined. Nick. We called him Nearly Headless Nick. Nearly Headless? Why did you call him that? His executioner messed up. He didn't get all the way through. His head was all dangling on the side. Cinna's fevered speech was disconcerting. The purple-headed Sin behind them blanched at the dark joke. That's not funny. He followed the two into the lavish hotel room. Jafar called out commands as he bustled Cinna in the bathing chambers. Go get dressed, Sin! And Nacht scurried in behind him. The pale freckled man lifted Cinna's whole body into the copper tub, clothes and all. If we wait too long, he could get very sick. I'm guessing he gets overheated like this a lot, he asked Nacht. Yeah, I don't know why though. We've worked in the heat tons of times, and he has his turban, so he should be used to it, right? Nacht wondered as he clutched his friend's hand over the tub. Perhaps your friend simply has a weaker constitution than yourself. Coming from Heliohapt, I'm sure you're quite used to hot weather. The man smiled. I'm not from Heliohapt. Nacht tilted his head. Really? I assumed with your skin and hair that you were. Where are you from? The man asked the boy. My village is called Medir. My mother was born in the Dark Continent. I never asked about my father. Is that right? The man hummed as he poured more cooled water into the tub. Your friend should be all right. He might get a bit dizzy a few more times today, but as long as he stays in the shade and drinks plenty of water, he'll be just fine. Masroor will have called the doctor to check on him as well. A knock sounded on the bathroom door. That should be him. The man opened the door and let a pudgy older physician inside the room. The boy overheated in the sun after a long walk. I'd like it if you look over him and make sure he's all right. Of course. Very good, sir. The hotel doctor nodded and bustled his way to Cinna with his bag of supplies. Jafar nodded at the doctor's efficiency and gently led Nacht into the sitting room. Now, let's let the good doctor work and get some food inside you as well. He sat Nacht on the couch and laid out a small arrangement of fruit on the table. But your friend will be fine. He's in good hands. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jafar. My name is Jafar. The freckled man smiled. Nacht nibbled on the fruit while Masroor stood against the wall and Jafar chatted with Nacht quietly. Sin came out of the bedroom dressed in fine robes a little bit later. Has the doctor said anything? He asked Jafar as he sat down. It's only been a few minutes, Sin. Give the doctor some time to work. I'm sure that Cinna will be fine. The freckled attendant pushed Sin to sit on the couch. Sin laughed as Noct handed him a succulent piece of sliced fruit. "It's really good, Mr. Sin." "Well, thank you, Noct. It's very kind of you to share." The purple-haired man took a bite. Noct gave a big yawn, covering his mouth tiredly. The little boy's metallic eyes were drooping tiredly as he slumped against the cushy pillows behind him. The man Jafar motioned towards the red-headed man in the corner. "Masroor, could you carry Noct to the room to lay down for a bit?" The Fanalese man nodded and lifted the drowsy boy into his arms. After settling the little boy in that bed, the man returned to the main room. The two other men were speaking of the other guests that Sin had brought with him. "And the girl. Surprising, isn't it? To think that she's a Fanalese just like you," Sin commented. "I am, yes. It is rather unusual." "Now, Sin, surely you weren't robbed of all of your belongings by those hideous thieves, were you?" "Surely I was," Sin laughed. Jafar's face contorted in surprise as he stomped in front of him. "Not just your clothes, but every piece of your equipment too." "They took every last thing." He smiled carelessly. Jafar frantically shook the laughing purple-haired man in his exasperation. "What's the matter with you? Did you forget what that was?" It's okay, I find a way somehow. Just leave it to me." "Oh, really? When are you going to awaken to your responsibility as our king, master of our nation, Sindria, King Sinbad?" "Don't worry so much, Jafar. I'm sure that..." The elderly doctor came out of the restroom where Sinna was. "The young boy will be fine. Could I trouble someone to help me carry him to bed?" Masroor walked over to the bathroom as the doctor stayed in the lounge to give his medical recommendations to Jafar and Sinbad. "I would keep him out of the sun for the rest of the day. If he must go outside, keep him in the shade, and make sure he has his turban on. Make sure he drinks plenty of water and has a lot of fruit for both lunch and dinner. I want him to have a good nap before lunch. I rewrapped his wrist in a new bandage. Also, I left his wet clothes on the bench and wrapped him in a towel. Let his clothes dry before you redress him to avoid chafing." "We'll keep your advice in mind. Thank you for your service." Jafar showed the man to the door. Before he left, the doctor nodded and gave Sinbad an odd comment. "Don't worry, sir. Your son will be up and ready for lunch in an hour or so. He looks so much like you, if I may say." And with that, the doctor left. "Son?" Sinbad questioned. Jafar shrugged as he shut the door behind the doctor. But Masroor's voice carried from the bathing chambers. "Sin, come see this." Jafar and Sinbad both entered the now cramped bathing room to find Masroor holding Sinna, who was bundled loosely in a large fluffy towel. But that wasn't the strange thing. The most eye-catching part of it all was Sinna's head. Before, all Sinbad could see was the turban wrapped tightly around his skull, covering every strand of hair the kid had. But the turban was off now, laid sloppily on the bench with the rest of his soaked clothing. And all Sinbad could see was the gleaming purple strands coming off the boy's head, dripping with water from the bath. "So that's why he thought Sinna was my son," was all Sinbad could say. Jafar, however, had a bit more to say than that. "You idiots!" He smacked his king on the arm furiously. What? What did I do?" Sinbad whined, rubbing his abused limb. Jafar's eyes were daggers and he ranted at his king. "What did you do? Look at him, Sin! He looks just like you! I knew all of your skirt chasing would come back to bite us one day, and it has!" But, I mean, it couldn't... I mean, sure it could, but... Oh crap. Sinbad tried to defend himself from his enraged attendant, but floundered badly. "Well, I mean, we don't have any proof that he is mine. I mean, it could just be a coincidence that his hair is the same color." "Yes, just like it's a coincidence that his name is Sinna," Jafar growled. "His poor mother probably named him after you. Oh, Solomon, his mother. She's probably going to demand some lavish treatment for a king adopting his kid on her without so much as a word. This scandal could ruin the integrity of our very country, Sinbad. Your honor could be stained in the eyes of every royal in the world." Jafar quickly worked himself up into a panic, Sinbad joining him for the ride. But, I mean, And we don't even know who his mother is. She could be one of the hundreds of noblewomen you've dallied with over the years. Hey, it hasn't been hundreds, Jafar. And what if a country decides to go to war over this, Sinbad? Or if they demand you marry this woman? We could find ourselves in an incredibly dangerous political situation. We could end up all but selling Sindria to a foreign power because you couldn't keep it in your pants. What? No! Sinbad was speechless as his vizier laid out all the ramifications for his actions, not to mention the responsibility of the child himself. Jafar turned to where Masrur was holding Senna to further his point, only to find them gone. When did I put him to bed? Masrur said from the doorway. Sinbad and Jafar realized how silly it was for them to be arguing in the cramped bathing room, so they shuffled out into the lounge. Of course. Thank you, Masrur. Sinbad coughed awkwardly. He collapsed on the couch and struggled to come to terms with what had just occurred in the last half hour of his life. I might have a son. You probably have a son. We'll have to have Yamraiha confirm with her magic when we return home. Right. But let's assume he is mine for now then. I have a son. I don't know who his mother is. I don't know what country he was born in. And whatever country he was born in can claim a citizenship over him if you do legitimize him, giving them power within Sindria's sphere of influence. Right. Senna gave his advisor a baleful look at his disparaging comments. Do you plan on legitimizing him? If he's mine, yes. If he's not, then he and Nakt are both free to become Sindrian citizens anyway. I already decided that on our journey here. Very well. So if Sinna is yours, then I'm a father. I never expected to be one. Inahoho will be pleased at least. He's been nagging you to find a wife and have a few kids for years. Yeah. I have a son. Solomon. Sinbad buried his head in his hands at this revelation.